Welcome back to the Holtcast. This podcast is funded by the generous patrons at patreon.com/Curtis Holt. Before we get into it, in this episode I'm joined by other members of the Blender Nest podcast as we discuss what things school does not prepare you for in real life, as well as professionalism and critique. If you're watching on YouTube, I will leave links to everyone that took part in this episode in the description. So let's get into it. So Sharon, is your ideal for like the future higher education in the United States and doing 3D artwork as a profession?
Higher education is the first priority. Like, I'll just complete my education as soon as possible. So that is most stable. Like, I'm getting job offers as well, like internships in my engineering side as well, like because I do know Python. I mean, like the Python which Blender uses is very different than the Python I know, like which I use for programming, data science, and neural networks and stuff, machine learning. It's very different. But I'm not like, it's been a long time since I touched it, but I think I can brush it up as soon as possible. But then it's still in my skill set. So, I'm getting like internships, and then they said like, okay, we can take you full time as well. But no, like that's not what I want at this point. Like my mind is all about like, let me make 3D as my career as soon as possible, so I can just be happy, do Blender whenever I want. I can wake up whenever I want. I can just do Blender whenever I want. I can just sleep whenever I want.
It's a good life.
I know, like, I'm just planning for that. Like, honestly, that's the main goal. Like, do whatever you want, but still be stable enough. That's what Curtis is doing. And I'm really happy for him, actually. He wakes up whenever he wants, he sleeps whenever he wants, and he does whatever he loves to do. And that's all I want, honestly.
That's the goal of all of us, man. Like, when if you're young enough when you're young, to be able to nail that down, do it, man. Because like by the time you're like older and it's all like what's available at the time, right? So like when I was like in my early 20s, like none of this existed. Like the internet existed, but it was like a lot. Like I think I had cable modem at the time, so I had a fast connection, but it just came around. Social media wasn't a thing. Like you had to put up a website to get any kind of recognition. You had to do search engine marketing. It was pretty tough to get yourself out there, and you couldn't take credit cards. Like you had to have a merchant account to take any kind of payments online, and people were still really careful and scared about like buying anything online at the time. And I was like, the stuff kind of didn't exist. Whereas now it's like, man, it's like the floodgates have opened, and it's still at the beginning of all of this. So
I don't know, like,
you take advantage of it.
Exactly. Like, I don't know from like how many people have bought my products and from which country they are, like which currency has been converted into dollars, and then it's in my bank right now. Like it's ridiculous to just imagine like it's all over the world at this point.
Oh yeah.
Like my products. Who would have imagined? Like it was like a dream for me, like to earn dollars like in the currency. Like normally it's like rupees, right? My currency. Like earning rupees is okay. Everyone does it in India, but sitting in India, sitting in a room like in the small, like I don't even know. I'm not even in a room actually. I'm sitting in this one small location, and and earning dollars is ridiculous. Honestly, I can't believe this is happening. But I'm really happy for that. But Rose,
it's an awesome thing.
Hey, Arturo.
You guys are like you're in the prime position to take advantage of this stuff because you don't have like the life hasn't quite piled on yet. Like it's starting to, you're feeling it, right? But it's like it's not quite there yet.
Definitely.
So it's a great time. I can't say I'm jealous, but it's like, but I'm more excited for you guys than anything because I see it. I'm like, oh, perfect. You guys are like right in this right spot, and you're taking advantage of it, and like you can mitigate the other crap that life will pile on you. Like I'm already at the point where it's like, oh, life already kind of like piled quite a bit on me, and I'm like, I still want to break out of it. And it's I'm fighting an uphill battle all the time.
Archer, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
What's up, crew?
Finally.
Happy Corporate Love Day.
Yes, happy Corporate
Love Day. Oh, by the way, belated happy birthday, Curtis.
Yeah.
Yes, happy greeting card day.
Yes.
Happy belated
birthday,
Curtis.
How was it?
It was
happy
good,
Hallmark
actually.
Day.
It's always nice having a birthday 2 days before Valentine's Day because it's like a constant reminder of how lonely you are.
Oh man.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in a little bit back where we were literally just talking about making a job out of doing all this stuff, waking up whenever you like during the day, making whatever you like. It is the dream, and I guess I'm very lucky that I've kind of got that running. It is full time. It comes with a whole host of anxieties. because I think one of the main things I've realized looking back is that you really have to get over that weird idea that you had growing up that hard work equals success, which is not necessarily true. It is to a certain degree, but it's very situational, where like the term running to stand still always comes to mind, where like I spent years and months on top of that, like just trying the same things over and over and over again and it not getting anywhere. And then one day you suddenly get like 100, 1,000, people just looking at one very specific thing that you didn't spend necessarily too long on, like in the long run when compared to other projects. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, disproportionate amount of efforts bring in disproportionate amounts of viewership and success. And so navigating that idea, I think, has been the most difficult thing. And I think it's probably something that, most people don't talk about because maybe they're not, completely self-reflective of the whole process or their change in behavior. And along with that comes this worry that you'll fall into a trap of the deserving mentality, which is something I've mentioned before, I think in one of the earlier Holtcast episodes, which is that when you receive a certain amount of success and you don't receive it in the future after that, you start almost hating the universe, like an external locus of control is kind of formed.
Yes.
And you're kind of thinking, okay, external factors are affecting this. It's not me, I deserve better. So I've been trying to navigate this and make these difficulties kind of more public. I've tried to be quite expressive about this kind of reflection and try and get other people on board. And I think to a certain degree, it's annoyed people sometimes because like I stop making the stuff that people want to see and I start making all this, really in-depth, like very personal stuff. But I think there's some people out there that find it really useful. So I wanted to kind of get your opinions on things like this. Now, this is a bit of a deep conversation, so I get it if there's like, a moment for pause, but have there ever been any moments in your life or any people you've observed like doing well where you've had those moments where it's like, okay, what I learned in school does not necessarily reflect life. Like I need a readjustment period here. Something's not matching up, finding your way as a human being, essentially. I wondered if any of you had any experiences that you might want to share.
Talking about school, I think the math that I'm learning, the calculus and everything, I don't know where to use it. So what I'm trying to say is like, it's very theoretical that I learn in school. And when it comes to practical, it's not applying the same knowledge practically. It's like learning about circuits and building circuits is very different, right? Whatever you learn in the school is not quite enough. But yeah, you should start experimenting. You should find your own way to get through the same thing. And it only comes by experimenting and experiences. That's what.
Yeah, school does not, it doesn't teach you, you're right. It doesn't teach you practical. I think once you get to like master's level, like my master's program taught me some practical stuff, but your undergrad, especially college, like high school and college are not going to teach you most of what you need to do to survive in the real world. It's just, it's a lot of theoretical stuff. Yeah. That's not to say like, okay, like learning math so you can count your money when you do exchanges that's one thing, right? But you're not learning, like college and school does not teach you how to go out and make money. It teaches you, like, especially like in the United States, it seems to be geared toward teaching you to go out and work for somebody else. It's not like an entrepreneurial mindset. You're not taught that. Okay, I'll preface it by saying that probably some schools out there do teach that. Like I know if you go to Stanford, if you can get into that MBA program, they do teach a lot of entrepreneurship stuff. But if you're in the the rank and file, you're kind of being funneled into corporate America, at least here. And it's not good or bad. It's just kind of the way the system is set up. So I think you take what you can learn from school and realize that your first job out of school is going to be like nothing like you thought it was going to be. It's just not. Like when I got out of college, I was like, oh my God, this is the real world. This is like, what did I need all that stuff for? It's just kind of a stamp of approval that says you can finish something. Yeah. And it's not practical. You're absolutely right. Like nothing I learned in school, it was really practical. Like there were a few things, like logic and contemporary rhetoric was a class I took, debate. And that is extremely useful in being able to pick apart propaganda now. That's amazingly useful to me. But it's not like practical. I mean, it's not like I'm making money doing this. It's just I can see through a lot of the BS out there. That helps. But as far as like making money, it's not really teaching you that stuff.
Yeah. One more thing, like in India, I mean, you can be like a machine learning scientist, but at that age, you can have that much knowledge. But I'm just saying, like 90% of the time, the first internship that you get is just going to be fill in spreadsheet. They just give you data. All you have to do is just type it out in a spreadsheet. Like, yeah, I mean, they're not trying to undermine you or something, like, underestimate your skills. They know what you're capable of, but then you should know how to work, like, practically. Like, so the first internship, it's going to be about spreadsheets, and then slowly, once they know that okay, you can work in a team, then they'll start assigning you more and more jobs. Until then, like, again, spreadsheets.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I see.
Exactly.
Yeah, I see interns coming in thinking that they're going to be designing the product. They're fed this. I don't know if they start believing this in college or whatever, that they're like some rock star and they're going to like go into the workforce with all this new knowledge and completely like turn the company on its head and be like a rock star. It's not the case. Like you get into a company, you got to prove yourself, and you have to see. It's like you said, you have to prove that you can work on a team, because a job is not, you're not like all on your own doing everything by yourself. It's all teamwork. So if you can't exist on a team, if you're a jerk, nobody's going to want to work with you. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
Right. So your attitude has to be right from the start. If your attitude sucks, you're off, you're out, you're gone. Right. And then there's like a number of other things you have to learn. Like you have to learn, interpersonal skills. You have to learn, where you fit on a team. You have to, where's your value added? Like what do you bring to the team? There's so much to learn that they don't really kind of teach you in college. Like I guess there's some programs out there that do kind of put you on teams and have you go out and do stuff, and that's like the more practical stuff.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome, because that type of thing prepares you. But just like thinking that you're gonna go and work for, I don't know, like General Motors, and you're gonna be the person designing the car. No.
Could you rephrase the question so I can be sure I'm answering the right question?
Yeah, we drifted a bit, but this is fine for discussion.
Yeah.
So the original question was about like having moments in your life where you've realized that what you've kind of grown to know, like the kind of things they teach you in school, is different from what you're experiencing in life. Like when you finally leave and you're confronted with reality, like have you had any moments that have been like, oh, okay, I need to kind of readjust my perception on life, like my choices, what I'm going to do?
Definitely. I think so. Thanks for rephrasing that. I think one of the first things that I wanted to do really early on was neuroscience. And that's completely, well, I wouldn't say completely, but very unrelated to what I'm doing now. Shortly after the neuroscience, I was focused on computer science, and that's also somewhat related, but very different from what I'm doing now. And so I think for me, one of the big things that I didn't learn so much in school was being able to pivot and take, understand this is what I've learned from this experience in my life, whether that be a work experience or what have you. And here's how I can apply that to this next jump or this next switch, instead of getting bogged down by the fact that I'm no longer doing what I thought I should be doing or what I thought I wanted to do. And that was huge. And I think for some context, like I went to public school. I went to my high school. The name is Terra Environmental Research Institute. So it was a magnet school that focused primarily on environmental studies, biomedicine, and robotics and engineering. And I was in the biomedicine sort of branch of those studies, but intermingled with all of the above. And I learned a lot. And the motto of the school was, when they ask us to think outside the box, we ask, what box? And so that sounds really silly, and it is, but at the same time, it's kind of this really, I think, really important concept and idea to ingrain in people, is to just be able to think outside the box, but even question the box that you're being asked to think outside of. Because I've been able, through that, like I've so far been I worked at a comic book shop, one of the oldest in the United States. I worked at a smoothie shop. No, it's A&M Comics in Miami, Florida.
Wow.
I've been to Newbury. It's a good spot. I worked at a smoothie shop with a couple of friends, and now I'm working at Harvard shooting lectures, which like the jump between, I mean, that's part of what I do, but the jump between smoothie shop boy and doing that was also another huge learning moment, which was working as sort of a tutor, mentor, really kind of I like to think like firefighter, put at the Idea Center at Miami-Dade College, where I helped organizations like Launch Code, which is a nonprofit that places people with non-technical backgrounds into jobs in tech, and with CS50X Miami, which is an offshoot of Harvard's CS50 course based in Miami, and other tech initiatives in the Miami area to get just people excited about it. And there I learned so much that I didn't learn in school, like how to write an email, how to show up to a business meeting. Like I've always kind of been, or at least actually up until that point, I'd been sort of like in this sort of consistent economic bracket for myself. And so, I would be showing up to meetings with really heavy hitters that are dressed to the nines in pretty much what I'm wearing now. And understanding that there is a difference there, but at the same time there isn't, is also something that I didn't learn in school. That was like an on-the-ground experience for me that I value and was able to carry through a lot. And I think like in my specific case, I'm from Venezuela. I grew up in Florida. I took the FCAT, which is Florida Comprehensive Assessment Test, and I dealt, at least from primary school, with a lot of teachers who taught for the test as opposed to teaching you for the learning.
Oh,
and so in some different way, part of that I value a lot because I was able to, because of my upbringing and because of just the way that my personality is, I guess, able to also see that and try to understand a little bit that I had to also put focus into teaching myself. And so I think that's also something that's not very, at least in my experience, covered in school up until that point. That is something that's been really helpful. But I think the biggest thing I would say is learning to pivot and learning to be okay with the unknown that lies ahead, and to sort of actively sit and try to think about, okay, this may not be what I'm doing anymore, but what can I take from it to whatever my next move might be that will help me excel, instead of getting bogged, because it's really simple to get bogged down by change. And because of the nature of my trajectory in life, it's been a lot of change. And so that's something that's not really covered in school, that nobody really sat down to have a conversation with me about, but through osmosis, I've kind of inferred this from several people in my life, from several situations in my life. Just be okay with change, because change will happen. Like seasons change, people change, jobs change, identities change, the way that you want to move forward in life changes. But the one consistent thing would be that you can be okay with that change and that you'll be okay. And I think that sort of temperament has been really helpful for me. And it's not something that's really covered, just like finances, that you should have healthcare for being a freelancer, and all these things that we've talked about on here are often not like specifically taught, but are facts of life.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that school doesn't encourage you to be constantly rewriting your origin story when you apply for institutional positions and fellowships and grants and stuff like that. You've kind of an application story. Like for me, I'm like an institutional kid. I went to a slew of private schools where there was a heavy emphasis on academia. My classmates were all really intelligent people, but as a result of sort of that institutional location, there was an emphasis on structure and selling yourself to the puppeteers of the structure.
Yeah.
And once you sort of transcend or get through this chain of institutions, from joining kindergarten when you're 3 to graduating from college, you kind of are forced to reevaluate who you are and what your role is outside of institution, which is really difficult if that's what you know, what you've been used to. And the story that you tell yourself to sell yourself to institutions doesn't work in real life, because you don't have anyone to convince. You just have to figure that out for yourself, and also come to terms with the fact that the origin story is ever evolving. Like for me specifically, I've been a writer my whole life. I studied history in college. I studied Chinese in college. At university, I studied at Yunnan Daxue, Yunnan University in China. I also studied at University of Edinburgh in Scotland, doing various things. And I was interested in a bunch of different things. And the institution always supported me. Like I never really had to support myself outside of convincing teachers and grant holders that I could do it, you know? So now in real life, I'm sort of presented with a new market. I'm sort of presented with the challenge of discovering new tools. When I met Arturo, I was using an operating system from 2011 and we met in 2017. So I didn't use my laptop for anything but email and maybe Google Docs, like Google Drive. So I didn't know anything. So learning Photoshop last year was so hard. And I've come a really long way, you know, being able to navigate Blender and various softwares like I can now. But sort of getting over that hurdle and figuring out what tools are available outside the institution, like open source tools, free tools that exist out there, like networks that you can join free of charge, like all these various Discords. There's so much. And if you're not really searching for these communities, you can easily overlook them. So that's kind of a bit of my journey.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, regarding the thing, I mean, there are many points that came through my head when the both were speaking. One thing was about skills, right? Like life skills is very different from what they teach. Teaching is educational skills is very different from life skills. If you think about the worst case, at least in India, when you go into the society, there are out of 100 people, there are about 90 people who are unemployed, because all these people are taught or told to them that they are supposed to become engineers or doctors or something else. That's it. But in the worst case, what else could you become? No one knew. I was a complete engineering nerd at even now I am, but I was at this point where I was completely done with how engineering felt. I know how engineering felt at this one point of time, and then I knew okay, I might get bored in the future for sure. I'm not sure how many people can do the same thing for the rest of their life, but I don't think so I can, because I'm not that stable enough. If I think about starting a tutorial today, after a few days, I might think, okay, this is not what I want to do now. Let's move on to something else. That's how fickle my mind is. But I'm not really sure if I can take up one particular skill and, just work on it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So, there are so many people. I'm not the only person in this world who thinks the same, right? There will be few people at least in this big, huge India, there'll be at least 1,000 people minimum who thinks the same way as me, probably. And if they don't have any other skills other than engineering, what they teach in school, I'm not sure what they're gonna do in the life. Most of them just waste the time, just roam around. I know so many people who does that. They don't know what to do. They don't get jobs because of their under skills, because they're not that good at engineering. But that's what, what school teaches you is just how to get a particular things done. But in reality, if that thing doesn't work out, what else can you do? That's not what we are learning anyway in this country, at least. I don't know if they're teaching you guys, but and also talking about Photoshop. Ellie, you told that you just got to know about it last year. I didn't even know that. I just know that Photoshop is something what photographers use just to make your face beautiful. Take all the patches from your face. That's all I know about Photoshop, but I didn't know it is a very powerful compositing tool. You can make a lot of things with it. I didn't even know that Blender exists, not in Blender, Autodesk, Maya, 3D software. I didn't even know that, just imagine, I watch animated movie, right, from the childhood. I didn't even know how they are made. I didn't even think, okay, this is an animation software. I didn't even know about that until I stepped into engineering. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
I was so I didn't know about all these skills that is possible. And they just say like, we spend so many dollars on this one particular movie. It's like, for what? It's just in a computer. Why would you spend so much money? It's all you have to do is just pay current bills. That's exactly what I was thinking. But I didn't know like so much this such a big pipeline, so many artists work for this one particular movie. Like exactly, like I mean, for example, life skills are nothing but the things which just pay you, and you're just getting paid because you have to, like like you don't want to starve. Like you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to just pay rent. Those are the basic needs, right, for humans, like for surviving.
Yeah.
So that's what those life skills are not even given. Like agriculture is there, but if all the farmers send their children to like engineering, who are the next farmers?
Yes.
There should be at least few, right? Like all these life skills are just getting extinct, I guess. I don't know. Like it's something which is happening. So I don't know. Like I was just working on it. Like I was just thinking about it.
That's a very good point.
I don't know if it's off topic, but I just want to put it out.
No, that's good.
Very good perspective.
I'll quickly throw in my 2 cents. Some of the things that I wish I learned in school, because I did in year 12, I did geography, which was an awesome subject. I did physics, maths 1, maths 2, and drama, of course. But I wish I didn't do the advanced maths 1 and 2 because that was pointless for me. Physics, I learned a few things. But I wish I did stuff like accounting or home ec, because I had the opportunity just to leave after year 10, because I knew after year 12 I was going to become a fitter and turner in the family business, and I was going to do that for the rest of my life. Well, met a girl, moved to a different state. Now I'm a public servant doing Blender stuff, making animations, YouTube videos. But it would have been good to actually have decent life skills. I mean, Ellie, you were talking about being very institutional, whatever that word is. It's Monday morning, and you're very right. You're pretty much, the whole curriculum is to get you to university, but for the people who aren't going to university, that's it doesn't help.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, my nephew's smart. He doesn't like school. He finished year 10. Now he's got an apprenticeship.
Yep. That seems to be the way.
But I'll leave you guys to it. I'll talk to you later. See ya.
Have a nice day.
Have fun,
Mark.
Have a good week.
Have a good day.
Good day at work.
Marco.
Sorry, I just want to quickly throw in there on the tail of Markham saying about the apprenticeship. This is another thing that wasn't really ingrained, I think, in the right context for me, which was being willing to work for free, like being able to take on an apprenticeship, being willing to take on an internship or a fellowship somewhere is incredibly important. One of the things that I said to Sadi Koltham, who's one of my mentors growing up, or really, I guess I'm always growing up, but really this was about 5-6 years ago, was teach me. This was on the night that I met him, but I could tell that, like, just based on sort of the my experiences around him and about him, I could tell that I had a lot to learn from him. And so I told him verbatim, teach me everything you know, and I will work for you for free. And he did, and I did. And that was largely what led up to this result of what I'm doing with my life now, which is, again, like working at this course that I took that I like really loved, and that has turned my life around for the better. But I prior to that had come from a long line of different paths that I had self-selected and was completely fine in fully enveloping myself in without any expectations of returns towards me, because it was more about the experience and less about the funding. I mean, and when you, I guess if you really want to go detailed into it, like there was, I didn't have a work permit, and so I couldn't accept any sort of funding either. So that was a whole other thing. But even without that sort of hurdle in the way, I just wanted the on-the-ground experience because I knew it was valuable. And so I worked for free, and I had internships and I had fellowships and experiences that weren't about how much will I make so that I can go on doing the next thing, but instead, what am I learning and how much can I absorb from all these great people that I'm around, so that when the time comes, if the time comes that I can finally do my own thing or self-select something that will give me returns, I will be fully well-rounded for it and won't be lacking and won't feel the same sort of imposter syndrome that I feel right now. And if you're, where's the camera? Stay on my iPad. I think it's here. If you're watching this, if this is a video, if not, if you're listening to it, imposter syndrome, I think, doesn't go away. That's what I will be 27 in a couple of days. And I've had I've had a couple of years of dealing with this thing that's just kind of kicking around, where every couple of weeks I will say to myself, you have no idea what you're doing. You are a fake and a phony. And I don't think it goes away. I think you just learn to deal with it, not necessarily ignore it, but recognize it and realize that it's just like a part of you that could just be there solely for the purpose of allowing you to tell it to F off. And so, just find the strength to tell it to go away, and that it's wrong, and you'll be fine. But back onto the thing about working for free, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, so long as you're aware that, the people that you're working for aren't taking advantage of you, and just really sit and think about, what do I get out of this in terms of what am I learning? Like, are the people that I'm working for right now ace at writing emails, as was the case for one of the places where I worked? Great. Well, no matter what happens here, what sort of emails I have to send, I'm going to take out of it that I will learn how to write the best damn emails. So come the next pivot, come the next turn, come the next thing that I want to work at, that won't be something I have to worry about. And copy and paste that mentality into everything that you do, and you'll at least have like a heavy tool belt of skills. That saying's like, jack of all trades is a master of none.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what it is? Jack of all trades, master of none, is better than a master of one. That's the full quote. And a lot of people don't finish it up. And it's important. Like, it's a lot better to be well-rounded all around, in my experience, than it has been to be like, fully about neuroscience. Because now, for example, and then I'll wrap it up with this, like, I didn't follow that path in my life. I'm not a neuroscientist right now. I don't actively study medicine. But the things that I did learn in neuroscience, when my interest in computer science and through it artificial intelligence came around, equipped me to understand some contextual jumps between neuroscience and that subject and what is artificial intelligence and the way that algorithms and machine learning are sort of laid out. And so that was incredibly helpful. I didn't become a computer scientist either, and my interest in artificial intelligence didn't come until after that. But because I did study neuroscience for a while, neuroscience and computer science after that for a while, then that was made easier to learn. And so it doesn't hold, I think the huge thing for me is that it doesn't hold this horrible emotional, physical weight on my body and on my being that I didn't follow through with what I thought I wanted at the moment.
Yeah.
And that is so liberating and so freeing. And I think it really helps me literally just sleep better at night, is that I don't have to fight with myself for not continuing this thing that I'd spent so much time on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very well
Makes
said.
sense.
So thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So about the whole coming out of school and having a different perspective on things, I've had a bit of an interesting childhood. I've been raised quite different to the people that I was surrounded by in school, because I've been very lucky to have a kind of behind the scenes perspective on a very specific industry, which is the film industry. Because my dad he's quite high up in his position. He hires a bunch of people. He's a special effects supervisor. So he works with production companies to, bring films to life. And it's been interesting growing up and being able to go on sets and speak to people from every single part of the ladder, every possible, pick an area on the ladder and there you go, you can speak to someone. And I've learned a few things, kind of assessing that as a phantom behind the scenes. Because when going through school, and even my parents kind of dealing with things almost the same way as what you're describing about the whole India situation, Sharon, is that, there's this lure towards the idea that if you follow one set specific path, you're guaranteed for success, and it eliminates the fear of failure and it eliminates the fear of uncertainty. And I've had to deal with that a little bit, because in school, that's all they teach you. As you were saying, they don't teach you necessarily for learning, they teach you how to succeed and pass tests. And that's kind of obviously represented I remember back when I was doing science, they literally gave us printouts of every single previous test that had been done because they had access to them. They're like, right, study all the questions, study all the answers, and sometimes they're going to come up, and that's how you're going to succeed. It's not a really good outlook on life. And even when it came to choosing whether to do university and A-levels come before universities in the UK. It's an optional thing. But I didn't want to do it because I was very much like stick a middle finger up to, the traditional way of doing things. But my parents were like, no, you've got to do it because that's what you do. That's sensible. I don't want you to be a dropout because there's, a bit of a stereotype of the idea of if you drop out, you're a failure. If you're a dropout, what you do is play games every day, This kind of idea of like this linear path to professionalism didn't really match up with what I had seen with my experiences, on sets and behind the scenes. Of course, there's professionalism, but here's the thing. Professionalism for me seems to have like this curve which goes up and then comes down, right?
Bell curve.
Yeah, it's a bell curve. So you start off with like maybe a school level, and as you kind of come out, you do your apprenticeship, so you do university, the professionalism ramps up. People start wearing suits. It depends where you're going, really. And like everyone wants really long emails, and it's all very, yes, we're going to do this properly. We're going to do it right. And you reach like, I think, a peak point of professionalism, which is like managerial. Everyone's going for meetings all the time. You're wasting time, But then after that, once you get to like super high level stuff, where people are just solely focused on producing things, to make money, to do whatever, I've seen that it drops off. Like there's a point of professionalism where people are kind of overcompensating because they feel like that's what you need to do to succeed. And then there's the people that actually know how to do stuff, right? And when you look at the entire ladder and you see that, you think, oh, that's what people don't see. Like people, they come out of school, they think, I'm going to work so hard and I'm going to be so super professional. I'm going to like write a long thing to apply. My portfolio is going to be massive and whatever. They spend all this time, even when they get into jobs, being hyper professional, trying so hard, but like they just can't see the other side of the curve. And that's messed me up because like I've had like, random cool chats with people that are high up in their field. And like, if you had a superiority complex, you could sit there and think, well, I'm super organized and this person isn't, then why don't I have their job and this, that, and the other, But that's the dangerous thing. That's the dangerous element about it. When you don't have that perspective, this is one of the kind of driving forces behind me having the confidence to try and do this weird lifestyle where you don't work for anyone, you just make whatever you like, and you're kind of just running with the idea that, if you spend short amounts of time on every project, it's better in the long run. It's quantity over quality essentially, but it does work, which is like a weird twisted thing that school doesn't really want you to believe necessarily, if you're told that hard work equals success. So yeah, I never really thought about how to like properly phrase all that, but I'm hoping that makes sense to some degree.
No, it totally makes sense.
It does.
Yeah, I think it's working smart.
Yeah,
working smarter always beats working harder. Because you can work harder, but you're not doing anything productive. Whereas you're working smarter, you're more efficient and you're burning through stuff and you're getting things done and you're knocking things out of the way. Mm-hmm. I've worked in corporations for my entire professional life, and I can tell you, like, you always know who the ambitious ones are, because they're always the ones that are like they will lace their conversations with jargon and what we call at least in the United States we call it corporate speak, which is like this like mumbo jumbo of like garbage jargon that actually means nothing, and it adds a whole bunch of superfluous language to something to make you seem like you know what you're talking about. And I can always tell the people who don't know what they're doing but are just jockeying for position by how much they use that language.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you what, like I work directly with vice presidents. I've worked directly with CEOs. Like these guys are not laced with jargon. Okay, the CEOs, when they do their press conferences and stuff, yes, they pull it out and they do that. But it's for effect. You talk to these people on the normal level in a meeting, they're not speaking that way. They're not using that terminology. Mm-hmm. They're just talking about like practical stuff and getting things done. That's it.
Yep.
And their hobbies and whatever, like they're human. They have fun. You can talk to them about lots of things because they're people. But like you're talking about that bell curve, and there definitely is that like ramp up where people are like, I have to learn the lingo, I have to write emails, I have to, and you'll see too. You'll see the people who they don't do a whole lot, except their name always appears on every single email chain that ever goes out. And you can tell who these people are that are just jockeying for a position versus the people who actually know what's going on. It's not a fair system because the people who are jockeying for a position a lot of times will end up in those positions. And they're not the people that necessarily know how to do anything. They're just the people who know how to play the game and climb the ladder. But on the other end, you know who the people are who actually get stuff done. And it's just like, it's a game. The whole thing is a game.
Yeah.
And learning that right from the get-go and knowing that it's just a game from the get-go puts you in an advantageous position. Because you could choose to be like, I know personally, I've had slight managerial roles where I've had project manager roles. Like I've been a project manager before. And I've been a lead for a number of years. I've had people working under me. I've had decisions on hiring and firing and things. But I've never wanted that next level, because the next level in a corporate structure is, for intents and purposes, it's called the BS job. And there's actually a book out there. I'm not going to use foul language because this is going on Curtis's thing, but there's a book out there called BS Jobs, and that's the title, BS Jobs. And it basically details these entire classes of jobs that are created in corporations that are virtually meaningless. And you could strip it all away and the company would still function. And so many of these people and things get caught up in these BS jobs. And it's like learning what these BS jobs are from the start and learning how to cut through that. Like you realize, like, for me, I don't want one of those jobs. Like I was speaking to a coworker like a few days ago in the office, and we're just like, we realized like managing in our company is basically doing the job that's everything you hate about work, filling out paperwork all day long, looking at people's timesheets, personality, like managing personalities. Like, it's just like crap. Like we actually just like to do the job. And for me, like, I like to actually like talk to people and go and market and bring in work. And I like to flood our department pipeline. Like, and I do this for my freelance too. I go out and I'll flood the pipeline. And I like that. I like bringing in work. Like, I like being a rainmaker. But doing like all that other minutia, it's important to do the minutia, but there's like a lot of these jobs will get so caught up on that. And that's something that college doesn't even prepare you for either. But you'll get caught up in that level and you realize like, it's such garbage. But a lot of times you have to go through that garbage to make it to the top.
Yeah.
And it's the point of what I'm saying here, okay, to bring this all around back home, is that there needs to be, and there's not right now, but there need to be, like, in our society, tracks where you could be like the creative and you can rise with the administrative. Mm-hmm. And right now the administrative is very top heavy. Like, administrative gets everything. Creative and engineers, like regular engineering will get, always stay below, and it's structured that way because of the BS job factor. But I would love to see it, and it used to be this way where it was, it was like this and you could rise with it. And I've seen, we've had engineers, and we've had, like, the film industry, you can do that. Like, you can be a creative and you can rise. Mm-hmm. But if you're like a creative in any other industry, you're fighting an uphill battle. So it would be cool if that levels out. But I did it again and I lost my place. So let's bring it back home to realizing what you want, and that's an important thing, is realizing which direction you want to go in. Because you can be on that level and do the BS stuff. You'll probably rise, but if you're creative, it's harder. And especially talking to our most of our audience are creatives, right? You kind of got to carve out that spot where you can rise with the tide, but you have to know that game is being played against you constantly.
Yeah. Before we pass on to Arturo, I just want to add one bit as well. You mentioned superfluous things, and I think that's something that's so important when thinking about what we're saying about the bell curve and over professionalism and wasting time. I mean, meetings are such a big point about that. People have meetings just for the sake of having meetings, and it's just terrible.
They have meetings to prepare for the next meeting.
Yes, exactly. And I think you can tell who really gets stuff done based on even simple things like fashion choice. Because, you've seen like these big, like high functioning billionaire CEOs, compare them to like what they wear to, people that try hard too much. They just wear trash. They wear the same thing every day because it's comfortable. Why? Because you cut off all the superfluous professionalism and you just get stuff done.
You get stuff done.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's true. I think that fits really well into Kev. You were saying it's kind of like a game, and I agree. It really does feel like a game. And so why not game it, right? Like I'm taking some notes down here because we're getting deep down into the weeds, and I appreciate it and I love it, and I got a lot to say about these things. And I love hearing, Kevin, what you just said. Like you said, Curtis, you said hard work does not necessarily equal success, essentially, and that's 100%. And Kevin, you were getting into the weeds of the jargon, and I know that's so true. And I was debating whether or not to say it, but I feel it, so. And I think it's true, so I'll just say it. Like, there's so many fake entrepreneurs out there, and you know who you are. You know who you are. Jargon doesn't mean that you know. It just means, and this is bringing it back to the education conversation, it just means that you knew how to memorize.
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't mean that you know how to contextualize. And so just because you can drop every single buzzword in an email or in a meeting or whatever, doesn't actually mean that you know what you're talking about or that you know the impact or influence that it might have or that it has. In some cases, I'm sure that it does, but and this kind of brings it to the other point, and something that I wrote down a bit earlier, which is that there's something to learn about and from everyone, absolutely everyone. So whether it's somebody who's working, and going back to sort of what you were saying, Curtis, like somebody who's working as a production assistant on a film, or somebody who's actually a director or a visual effects artist, like every single person up that ladder, if we're using the film analogy, has something really valuable to digest in terms of what their experience has been. And what I try to do when I'm in situations where I meet people that don't do things that have to do with what I'm working on or that I wouldn't normally have access to otherwise, is try to absorb those bits of knowledge. Like what does a production assistant know about the set that a director might not have the time to know because they're working on something completely different, right? And so, and kind of doing a sort of 8 shape or infinity shape back to what Kevin was saying, like it brings the idea of knowing your strengths. Like there are people who have specific strengths and things. We know this, but you also know the things that you could be doing better that you're not doing, and the things that you could be working on that you're not working on. And so that's where this game comes in, right? Because you have this idea of, okay, I can learn something from absolutely everyone, so I shouldn't just pander to the CEOs or the collegiate professors of whatever I'm working on or school I'm going to, or the head of this company that I'm working on. So the idea of like not pandering and absorbing as much as you can from everyone, but at the same time, like how can I take some time to focus on working on the things that I know that I could be doing better at? Because again, like hard work doesn't necessarily equal success, but for a lot of people, and this is something that I've seen personally helping people get placed into jobs, and also myself being placed into jobs, it's more about the drive. Like, no, I have a hard time believing that people will hire somebody who doesn't have an inkling of wanting to be in that position, unless it's, some job like in the movies, like Office Space or something, where the people are just like dead inside.
Best movie ever, but go on.
And so how, like, I guess this turns the conversation a little bit, but into knowing your strengths and recognizing the strengths, because I think that that's something that's also huge. It's not necessarily taught in school. So we've got absorbing, we've got that there's something to learn about from everyone, we've got pivoting, but then knowing your strengths and kind of working on top of those, I think for me at least, is a bit trickier, because I can snap a photo better than I could a couple of years ago, and I would say that I do have an artistic eye, this is not something that I would feel comfortable saying when I first started this gig, but kind of going back to something we were talking about earlier too, like hard work does not equal success. Sometimes I will work really hard to take a lot of photos so that I have a lot of coverage of an event just in case, and then I'll go through and cull those and make something beautiful out of those photos. But some of the photos that have been best received by audiences online, my friends, and even myself, are pictures that I didn't really think about when I clicked the shutter. And I didn't shoot 60 of them like I do sometimes to get just that one good shot. I was just in the right moment at the right time. I took the right amount of time to like lift up the camera, right amount of time to hit the shutter. All my settings were right. And boom, we've got a moment like captured in time from an angle that nobody else has, that makes people feel like they were actually there. Meanwhile, like I've got photos that I've actually worked really hard on shooting and in post that just don't either see the light of day or aren't as striking, or you can actually see through the fake entrepreneurs and see that they're just, they're fabricated and they're worked really hard on. And so like, how do you then what's the word? How do you sharpen that sword? Like, how do we work on knowing our strengths? And I know, Curtis, you had other questions lined up.
Well, I'll pose one more question. What's a giveaway sign that someone has a creative outlook on life? You can take a while to think about that one.
Okay, the first thing that I'm gonna ask is like, what does it mean? Like, it's too complicated English for me to understand.
Okay, so someone who goes through life just with a creative attitude, so they can combine ideas. They're always trying to do things maybe a bit divergent from normality, because that's what creativity is. So are there any signs, any tics, any behaviors, any ways they speak, any ways they present themselves? Like if you were to look at someone on the street going by and you think, that person must be kind of creative. I'm just wondering if there's any identifiable things that you might have picked up on.
Either he should be Gabe or he should be Ben. Very Gabe.
I think for me right now, it was the fact that Sharon asked for clarification on that question. And that to me brings creativity maybe to really like it wasn't anything out of this world. So maybe low level isn't the right way to say it, but just it wasn't an intense show of creativity. But to me, it showed he wasn't just answering the question directly of like, what do you, I forgot what the exact phrasing was, but he was thinking, okay, I want to make sure that I don't answer this question with my own line of thinking of what the question was, which to me to a very minute level speaks like, he's churning things up there. He's thinking about things.
It's like if information is a tool, he's looking for more of it.
I would say there's three characteristics. The first characteristic, like what Arturo was pointing to just then, like the varying authority or even resistance to authority. Like when people like bristle to when told exactly what to do, when it rubs them the wrong way, when the whole purpose of an activity is just to follow instructions, and that's bothersome to you, that's a sign that you're a creative person. The second characteristic I would say is vision. If you don't want to follow instructions in this way, what would you do instead, right? So you have to have a vision for an alternative for yourself, for your life, for your goals, for your purpose. And then the third thing, I would say, I wrote down energy/hope. So you have to like have this like inner fire to like not only envision a new way of doing things, but embark on that like new journey. And in order to have energy, you have to be a hopeful person. Like you have to believe that there's like a purpose to it all. Like there's a reasonable chance that what you are going for can be achieved, and that there's goodness in the world so that you can achieve it.
Yeah. That's lovely. That's a lovely way of putting it. Damn, Ellie's on point here, coming in with the...
I know, that's really on point.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was going to answer, there's no way I can tell. I can't. I think that's awesome what you said. Personally, I have walking down the street, any telltale signs that somebody's creative, I can't. People are way too complex for that. I think I've met so many people that I thought weren't creative at all who totally blew me away. And it's just in one area. They're super creative in one area, and like the rest of their life is just like dead inside. But that one area, and you don't even know it. I've seen people, dressed to the nines in the suits who you think are just total, game players and fakers, who actually turn out to be super creative and cool. And it's just, I think it's there's a level of complexity to human beings and a level of life experience too, that kind of life is designed to beat that out of you. At least modern society seems to be, and it's not a conspiracy theory or anything. It's just kind of the way it's set up. We're set up to make money and keep things going. And it doesn't really foster creativity. But when creativity hits, we all realize, oh my God, it's so great that we're creative because we solve these problems with creativity, right? And then it's like back to like the same, go to job, go to work, make money, pay my bills, blah, blah, blah. And it's just kind of like it wears on you over time and beats you up. But having that fire inside that you were talking about is key. and
Yes.
and not following authority. There's a lot of the authority, authoritarian, this need for, big daddy to save us from all the big scary stuff out there. And it's like, you can't live like that. When you're in fear, you're all your creativity, all your rationale shuts down, and you're just in survival mode. And on a second point, I think too that there's a lot of people faking it by being contrarian. And I think there's nothing more annoying than a contrarian. I've seen these people, especially online, where they just like have to come in and disagree with everything just because.
Yep.
And that's like not being creative. That's not being anything other than just like showing your weakness. So it's not like it doesn't denote creativity at all. It denotes coming from a place of weakness. So, but to get back to your question, Curtis, is seeing that on the street. I don't know that I can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a little bit of understanding, or with a little bit of talking. Maybe it's possible. What I'm trying to
Just
say
to play
is
devil's advocate here, real quick. Just kidding. Just being
contrarian.
Contrarian. Yeah, I would say actually
I knew it.
about that
contrarian
point,
never says devil's advocate.
Yes. All right. Well, Kev, about that point, I think it was actually on episode 2 of my podcast. I had talked about it might have been the hate comments video, the non-conformist conformist, which is where someone conforms entirely to the idea of not conforming to anything. They're disagreeing to be disagreeable. The non-conformist conformist.
Hipsters.
Hipsters. There we go.
2 was feedback, wasn't it?
Yes, it was how to give good feedback. Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
I really loved it.
Yeah. Well, I've heard a lot of people like handing that one off to other people, like who they've seen giving bad feedback, and I'm like, oh no, it's becoming like a backhanded thing.
Yeah. Exactly. Recently, you guys saw that, right? Like, I got this one hate comment, criticized by someone. I literally took some lines from the podcast and just put it there. I know it was still in my head. It really helped me a lot, understanding how to deal with these things. If at all, it's all the time I come here, I just give critic. It's did someone ask you for critic? No, then don't give it.
Exactly.
That's the whole point.
That's the key point. If they didn't ask for it, then why do you think that you have a right to, or even if you do give critique, why do you think that they have to accept it, Because there seems to be a lot of people that get that if someone denies your critique, then a lot of people go, well, you just can't take criticism. Well, do they have to? You've come out of nowhere. They didn't ask for it. What's the thing? You don't have control over their life. So, maybe just ask first. But yeah, one of the key points about that one was that there are so many ways you can word something negative in a positive way to not hurt someone, right? And it really doesn't take much effort, but people just can't be bothered because they don't care. And I think the
Can
example.
we curse on here?
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no because it's on lots of different platforms, so I don't know. But why? What were you going to say?
Oh, the ish sandwich.
Oh, yes. Yeah, pretty much. What was I going to say now? Drawn off.
There's lots of different ways to say something negative positively.
Yes. So I think the one example I gave was that when someone says, it's terrible, it's bad, it's crap, it's S word and whatever, and you're like, you could just say, I appreciate the effort that's gone into it. Typically, I don't like this kind of artwork. I'd be interested in seeing what else you can make. Because that's literally saying, I see the effort. I don't like this artwork, right? That's if you read between the lines, that's what it says. But how much longer does that take to write? And it makes the person still feel good because it feels like, oh, this person's appreciated my time, even though they don't like the artwork. So,
Yeah. 90% of the time when people give critic, they don't really know what stage in the learning curve they are in.
Mm-hmm.
If at all, if he was the first day, making the donut and just posting, okay, this is what I made so far. It's okay, the lighting is bad, this is bad, the texturing is bad. No, it is bad because this is the first day. They don't consider a learning curve where they are at that point. And that really concerns me. So whenever I see something, most of the time I don't give bad critic. If they ask for it, I will, or else I'll be okay, fine, that looks really good for whatever you made. If he's proud of it and he's putting it in the completed projects, I'm sure he's happy with the result for the time he's put in, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
why just have to like push it and like, okay, this is bad. No, this is not. It's good for
Exactly.
whatever you did it.
The best and
Yeah.
worst thing you could ask is just be honest, right? That's both the
Yeah.
best and worst thing you could ask of someone. And I think
Yep.
like just like that, like
Yeah.
I've shared so many bits of work that have been renders of just what's the most condensed way to say this? Like V1s of things that I'm working on, just to say like, here's what I'm working on in spaces, not necessarily in the server, because obviously like we've been pretty good about that, but just in places where it's like, I'm not sharing this for your critique, I'm sharing this to show you what I'm working on. And then I'll get a message back like, oh, you could do this, that, and the other. It's like, dude, I'm just showing you what I'm working on. I'm not asking for advice on what to do. I know where I want to take this. This is just version 1, and I thought it was a moment to share, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
And it's a tricky situation, right? And I think that delineating those spaces, kind of like we have with like, this is what is work in progress, and we talk about things that are, here's where you share the things that you're working on, and here's where you ask people to actually chime in on those is a really good way to go about it, because it's not necessarily that people are all really sensitive or can't take critique, but sometimes it's more helpful to the creative process and taking an idea from sort of inception to fruition, to have clearly delineated, this is where I go for the pat on the back, and this is where I go to sit and think about what I've done.
Yes.
I remember this one time, Curtis, like when I sent this like for you, like when you all said like the bricks looks really good, and these people in one of the place where I shared it, they're like, it looks bad, it's terrible.
Yeah.
Like literally they said these words, was like, okay, I didn't ask for it. Like I just sent like whatever I did so far.
Yeah.
And you all guys, like, you said, you gave like nice critique. You said like compositing can be improved and everything, which is quite what I wanted at this moment. Like, because I'm done with it. I'm not going to touch it ever again, but I really want to know what can be improved. But I remember what Curtis said in one of his podcasts, I guess, or in one of his discussion videos. Take advice from take critique from the persons only you take advice from. God, it's very hard to remember the sentence.
Okay,
but yeah,
I'll just say, only take criticism from people you take advice from. All right, that's a shorthand version of it.
Yeah, that's it. So, and I didn't ask for critic or whatever, but I just shared it. And they're like, okay, this could be improved, this could be improved. Yes, I do know, but I don't know how. Can you show me? No, then why?
Yeah.
I just got so furious. It's like, you're not helping me. It's of no use.
I have a magnet.
I told them, like,
I have a magnet for that on my channel. Like I put up a video 20 years. It's, basically I've been at 3D for 20 years. So I'm like, all right, here's 20 years of 3D artist experience. I don't say that I've been a paid artist for 20 years. I have actually been a paid artist. My first freelance gig was about 20 years ago, but so I needed a bunch of B-roll.
Yeah.
So I used a bunch of B-roll, and it was older stuff. I'm like, I'll just show whatever. Like, I don't care. I need filler. So I just like found a bunch of like old stuff and I put it on there, and I'm like, here's where I was, whatever. I didn't explain it. Here's where I was. I get personal attacks, like personal. And I'm like, what the, like, I had to write to this one clown came on, and I'm gonna call this person a clown because that's what they are. Like, they came on and they're like attacking me and saying my artwork has no merit. I'm like, okay, this person's like clearly mentally deranged and possibly dangerous. But I'm like, all right, I took the bait. I don't know why. I think I was like, I had a few shots of whiskey at the time or something. I'm just like, all right, here you go. I'm done. So I just like fire back, and he comes back, and I'm like, and that's when I'm like, all right, I'm gonna play with this guy, and I'm just playing, or guy, girl, I have no idea. And I'm playing, and then finally, like, just total personal attack, and I'm like, all right, we're done, and I like banned this person from my channel because I'm like, this person's dangerous, and I'm like, where does this come from? And it's just total magnet. Like, people won't look at the other work. They don't even stop and ask themselves, like, wow, in this video, is this his new stuff? Is this his old stuff? Like, all you can do is just simply ask, hey, is that your older stuff I see in the video? Is that your newer stuff? They just assume like that's like my best stuff. I'm like, I'm not gonna put my demo reel stuff, my private, like I'm not showing people my last name. Like, I'm not out there. Like, I keep a level of privacy on my channel, right? Like, so yeah, I'm gonna put my current artwork. Oh, and by the way, like I work a ton of stuff under NDA too, which can never see the light of day, right? Especially like the new freelance stuff I'm doing, the medical stuff. That stuff, like, I hope that should see the light of day someday because it's good. But they just assume and they attack, and it's like, you guys are weak. It's just weak. So like,
I just don't get it. Like, even though like it's your best artwork, what they criticize, like, why? It's your thing. Like, it's your personal thing. You didn't ask for critique. Why do people do that?
Like, if somebody doesn't ask for critique, I'm not going to critique. It's just like an unwritten rule of professionalism. It's like, I recently had a guy too who came on my channel. He's like, your stuff, it looks like you just started. And this is from somebody who actually has like his business profile up on YouTube. And I'm like, do you realize like this is making you look like garbage? I actually just took it down because A, I'm not giving this person like any free advertising on my channel, and B, like, I'm doing him a favor by like taking down this stupid comment, because I've said this before. I have actually seen resumes go in the garbage after somebody looks at somebody's like after HR or a hiring manager looks at somebody's social media profile.
Yeah,
I've seen this.
Trash takes itself out.
Yeah, quite.
In school,
I've seen it.
In school, we ask each other for constructive criticism. Like, the teacher instructs you to get, like, when you're doing peer reviews, to give constructive criticism. And so, like, constructive criticism is not like a value judge. It's not a judgment. It's not a value judgment. It's usually a string of observations. So if you're going to offer critique, like, you're not offering critique if you say it's terrible, it's crap. Yeah. That's not a critique. A critique is, I'm not sure where the subject is in this piece of art. Like that, that could be useful, because as an artist, you created it, so you know what the subject is meant to be.
Exactly.
And it's useful because it's another set of eyes. But beyond that, like, value judgments are just not valuable, especially if they're not from people who share your principles.
Yep.
True.
Yeah. There's something called brutal critic, right? Like, I do ask for people like, okay, be brutal, which means I don't want them to say, okay, it's crap, it's terrible. I just wanted to like nitpick everything, what they find something is wrong with it, right? But whenever I say like, okay, you can be brutal about this critic, and be like, okay, this is terrible, this is bad, what the heck is this? What the heck? Like, no, that's not what it is.
Yeah.
I get it. Like, honestly, I'm not lying.
You've always
like, when I say brutal critic, it means like nitpick all the issues that you can find here.
Yeah, like if you're doing critique, look, like, just ask yourself the one simple question of what information is in that piece of critique that they can use to change, because terrible is not information at all.
It's not information.
Yeah, but like
it's valueless.
Talking about like, the whole having contextual places to separate whether you want to just share something or get critique on something. I think what I've seen is that people generally know what they need, right? Like, and I guess in some weird way, a lot of people online think that other people don't know what they need and that they're the ones that need to tell them what they need,
I know.
And it's about like imposter syndrome, as you were saying, Arturo. Like, most people feel imposter syndrome a lot. I mean, I've seen people at the top of their game that just go on like extended Twitter rants about how they think they're terrible. And they're like, you've worked on like the biggest stuff. Like, how do you still feel that way? But like when people shared their work, I think a lot of people know that to carry on, or just to give them validation for doing something, all they just need is a little bit of encouragement from someone else. So that's why they share it.
Yeah.
And then
just
that
be
keeps
positive.
going.
Exactly.
Yeah. Be positive.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that I don't know, but I think there are just negative people out there that think, no, I see what they're doing. They want validation, and I'm going to deny it to them. Why? Why? Yeah. Why are you going to, literally, why? Why are you going to deny them that validation? You could just say, oh, it looks cool. Like, you could help them out. Why do you want to put them down? How does it affect your life? Does putting them down somehow make you more successful? No. It's just being an asshole.
It is. You're absolutely right. That's what it is. And people think like, I don't know if there's like, if they're like, if there's like people teaching, oh, here's how you get people to your channel. Go on a big channel or go on a video who's successful and just like berate that person. And then people will be so curious, they'll click on your stuff and go to your channel and you'll get views. Like, no, that doesn't work. That just makes you look like a douche.
Yeah.
Like, pardon my French, but it's like, you look like, it makes you look really bad. Like it takes just as much energy to be positive as it does to be negative. So why not just be positive?
Yeah.
Be helpful.
I just
You know?
feel like sometimes it doesn't. I mean, few people, okay, like you don't know what the person is, like who the person is. Just in case if you say like, okay, this is terrible, I don't know like how much it would affect him mentally. Like it's not about, maybe he might quit the whole thing and just leave because he thinks it's not worth it. I just don't get it. Like sometimes
maybe
people, yeah, like if they're so sensitive enough, like you know, it can go to that extreme as well. Just because of your one critic, which you said it's terrible, they might just leave it. Like they'll never touch it again.
Yeah.
Which is terrible, and you
it's
did
like-
it to him. So just
it's
don't,
like
just don't do
I
that.
love if you're on Twitter, look up Richard Marx. He was a songwriter who he had a few hits on his own over the years. But he's probably had like many more like #1 hits than so many other people because he writes for other people. And you go on like, you know, he's pretty politically outspoken too, but it's hilarious because like people will like just try to like destroy him, like, oh, you're a has-been, I don't even know who you are, like you're nothing in music. And like, yeah, he still is in the background doing a whole lot in the music industry. Like he's incredibly successful, and he will just destroy people who come at him. And it's the funniest thing ever because you just watch his reactions to these trolls, and he just eats them alive, and it's the coolest thing ever. And I'm like, it's great. It's cathartic.
Yeah.
It's like yeah.
I just realized something else that I forgot to mention in the actual feedback episode is that for super insecure people, right? And you can tell when someone's being super insecure when they're criticizing someone else, is that they measure something that they're super focused on as kind of like a metric for the value of someone else's work, right? It's kind of like what you're saying. Like if someone's looking at just the surface like music work that guy's done, they go, oh yeah, you've only done this. They're intentionally ignoring everything else that's going on.
Oh yeah.
It's not that it's not even that they just don't know about it, it's that they just don't care, or they just don't want it to be real. And that's interesting when watching people like, you know, criticize other YouTubers and whatever. I don't like this video. I don't like this piece of artwork. I don't like this product you've made or whatever. And like going on like tirades. Is that the word? Tirades?
Tirades. Yeah, tirades.
Tirades.
That's a word. Absolutely.
Just about why it's a bad thing and how, oh, you spent so much time on this and that. And you think, okay, this is a slither of what's going on, right? You know, you've got to have a bit of perspective, but we can see that you're tunnel visioning in on one thing and just like putting all your eggs into one negative basket just to try and cause harm. Like, there just needs to be a wider perspective. And that's just generally a rule that applies for everyone, because everyone's just a big collection of different eggs. That's a really weird way of putting it.
It is something to learn about and from everyone.
Exactly.
I think like for me, the way that it was cemented probably very well, kind of struggling on this because I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. But essentially, if you think about every horrible person in history, outside of whatever horrible thing that they've done, right? Like they were really good at one specific thing, maybe a couple of specific things. And if you just absorb that, like for example, public speaking, which is a simple one that comes to when you think about like political leaders, or you know, if writing or what have you, like you can glean something from that, take it to your arsenal, use it, craft it, and then shape it into something. And so for me, it's always so crazy, especially like on the server, I've seen probably the most kind of, I would say some of the most aggressive messages I've seen directed at creatives that I've seen on my history on YouTube, but I've never left a single hateful comment or a single, if I don't like something, the most I've done, which I think I've done maybe a handful of times, is give a thumbs down. But even that, if I think something's genuinely misleading, I'll thumb it down. If I don't like the video, I won't thumb it down because I try to look at the video outside of me and what I enjoy and think, okay, but can I see how this would be useful to somebody who's a little bit different than me, who has different interests than me? Like, for example, I don't follow sports at all, but like things that are kind of like sports leaning or sports heavy, I don't like, but I'm not going to go and dislike this video. I'm not going to take some time out of my day to go and dislike somebody's video that has like a sports analogy because they're catering to sports or because they like sports themselves. Like, what?
I know.
I could take that time and actually go find a video that I do like or leave some constructive criticism if it feels right. But this whole culture of I'm going to say exactly what I want, what's on my mind, because I am a keyboard warrior and nobody will find me. Like you said, Kev, is so damaging, because I've also like been in situations in which people either next to me or around me are just not getting the sort of attention that they deserve for their technical merits, because their social schemas are lacking in terms of what is acceptable, what is reasonable, and what is honestly, I think acceptable is the best way to put it. Like, there are some things that just don't make sense no matter what lens you look through it, but some people will, I guess maybe for the spirit of being contrarian, will hold that like, I reserve the right to comment this negative thing on your video because you posted it on the internet and you should know that this could happen. But think about what the internet would be like if like people weren't, if that wasn't a value that they held. Like, we could just be all learning and growing from each other, because like I said when I started this whole rant, something to learn about something to learn about everyone and something to learn from everyone.
The internet used to be like that when it first started back in like the late 90s. It was very it was academic, mostly in colleges, and it was a way more positive place. Social media and the weaponization of stuff has really just destroyed that. Like, and people think it's cool to just go and say whatever you want. It's like, you don't realize what that's doing. You don't look good doing that. And people need to learn the hard way when their resumes go in the garbage, that or they don't get called back. Maybe I should maybe this isn't the right way to go.
For the people that like, just jump around all over the place, just throwing their thoughts left, right, and center with no filter, and then get defensive if, someone calls them out for it. If you feel like you have the right, for freedom of speech to say what you like, everyone else has the right to ignore you. That's something that you just need to get comfortable with. So, but this has been really interesting. I'm going to have to close it up because it's getting on. But thank you everyone for joining me. We've got Arturo, we've got Sharon, we've got Ellie, we've got Kev, we had Markham. So thank you for joining.
Curtis Holt.
Yeah, and Curtis Holt, right? So,
Curtis Holt.
Did you say that in an American accent?
The most American.
Yeah.
Just a little bit.
Yes.
Curtis Holt.
I love when you do that. You do it well. It's great.